If you know TT from Genshin Impact, you've already seen one of these. Jiangshi are made in many ways, like supernatural resurrection or souls not leaving their bodies due to improper death. That's why they're sometimes called Chinese zombies, although the true translation of their name means rigid corpse. The Jiangshi is most identifiable by the yellow talisman placed on their foreheads by Taoist priests that help control them. After all, transporting corpses is way easier when they can move by themselves. Sometimes uncontrolled Jiangshi run around and drain people of qi or energy, which is why they're also sometimes called Chinese vampires. The Jiangshi has another iconic trait. Rigor mortis stiffens their joints, so instead of walking, they stretch out their arms for balance and hop around instead. Now that we all know what a Jiangshi is, it's time for us to get started on the design. So I did a lot of research for this Jiangshi character. So what we want is either white or green skin because she's dead and also fungal growth or something. And also white hair. I'm gonna go and add in colored streaks because Monster High and also because I just love multicolored hair. That's the same reason why I love My Little Pony and Demon Slayer because I just love it so much. Okay, so after I decided on that alongside the fact that she has the iconic Jiangshi talisman, I completely fashion blocked. Bro, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just floundering. So I went to Inkyo's Discord to search for help on a journey, I guess. And one person was like, okay, here's a bunch of fashion styles. And that was very nice of them. So I saw the word retro and I saw the word cyberpunk. And I was like, And then I thought of something a bit different than either of these. 2000s internet core. Yes. I'm just gonna go and try and shove these into the design and see how it goes. This is not something I've seen before ever, so I don't know how to do this, but that's alright. The Jiangshi typically wears the Qing Dynasty officials outfit, which, I mean, I can work with it, but I also want to make this Monster High, so I take the long baggy sleeves and I change them into something inspired by Hatsune Miku, you know what I'm saying? We're also gonna keep the Qing Dynasty official hat, and we're gonna put a globe on top of it because app icon reference. Everything else, we're just gonna try our best. I made a mental note to myself to go ham with the patterns because Monster High characters love going ham with the patterns. So there's a lot of window pane prints. I also added in web prints and a literal spider because website. So what do I have planned for her vibes? She isn't a new girl in school, but she's always faded into the background. She's quiet and tends to keep to herself. She doesn't like talking to people, and unlike Gulia is verbal, but she's easily intimidated by strangers and has a hard time making the first move. But then, when a Manananggal joins Monster High, she ends up taking the Jiangshi under her wing. You know, that's just something extroverts occasionally do where they just kind of adopt others as their friend. I also want to name the Manananggal Teresa Mangle as a combination of two name suggestions. Thank you very much, guys! The Jiangshi does like being with her friends, but she also kind of feels like she lacks a personality due to her quietness in comparison to her more out there friends. Sometimes she feels like a third wheel, or like the spare tire on the back of the truck. As for her hobbies, she really likes the internet, and that's why her outfit is like that. And yes, this is how I justify all of my characters' outfits. I do not have any other valid reasons. Would it make sense for a shy character to wear something like this? No. In any other series than Monster High, think about it. Is anyone really gonna notice your outfit when everyone's wearing stuff like this? Or this? Or this? The Jiangshi is a bit chronically online. Not in the spends hours on TikTok at 3 AM way. She just reads about all sorts of stuff on there, like just goes on Wikipedia binges and keeps listening to hours-long video essays on YouTube. She especially loves exploring archives and lost media specifically because she likes to preserve memories before they're lost to time. She feels like she herself lost that opportunity to archive her own self because she doesn't really know what and who she was when she was alive. So for her backstory, I struggled because when it comes to Monster High characters, when you're like a vampire or a zombie or something, it would make sense to have a pretty dark backstory. Dracula's biological parents are canonically dead. Cleo has a really sad origin story involving her being separated from her mother during a coup and then being asleep for 1,300 years. But this is also for kids. So for some characters, they do avoid being too dark. Gulia is actually born a zombie from zombie parents, for instance. Other times, they just don't elaborate too much. I read Spectra's wiki and it says her backstory isn't clarified, but they simply imply it's tragic. So I think for this Jiangshi, I'm just gonna go with the she can't remember her backstory route. She died prematurely, of course, because she's still a teenager, and then after that, she just kinda woke up one day, lots of years later, and she doesn't remember what or who she was when she was alive. The priest who put the talisman on her forehead is her adoptive grandfather and her only family, and he's completely human but very in tune with the supernatural. There is precedence for this, by the way. Rebecca Steam's dad is a human, but she, as a robot, is considered a monster. There's also plenty of other examples of human-monster relations in the Monster High universe. I genuinely find it very amusing how I always bring up canon stuff as if I need to go and cite all of my writing. She ends up going to Monster High some months after her resurrection because Grandpa decides that she needs to get out of the house and off the computer, make some friends and get an education, you know? I think that her backstory might still be too dark for children, especially since I don't consume Monster High media, so maybe some stuff is around the same level of seriousness? Or is this too much? I wouldn't know, I just think that the fact she used to be an alive, normal girl would kind of freak kids out. But never mind, this is the only idea I have. Another idea I have is that one day her grandpa will also die, and then he'll also become a Jiangshi, and they'll be Jiangshi together. That does sound dark, but it'll also be super cute, don't you think? Oh my gosh! Literally just grandpa and granddaughter time forever. Aww. For her character arc, I think it'll be about moving on from the past, accepting what you cannot change, and trying to focus on the present. She'd be pretty upset by the whole being dead thing and not remembering who she used to be. She feels like she might have been better than she is now, more connected and less scared of others. She also wants to know more about her previous family. But then she'd learn to accept her current place in the world with Grandpa and her friends as a Jiangshi. There could be an episode where the Jiangshi starts skipping school to stay at home on her desktop all day, so her friends Teresa, Clowny, and the others go to check on her and they realize she's having a terrible time. The Jiangshi wants to find out who she used to be as a living human and is trying to find traces of her previous self but can't. But her friends help her know that she has them and Ye, and maybe that can be enough for her right now. And then over time she would gain confidence and overcome her social nervousness and come to accept who she is right now and not what she used to be. This is definitely not child-friendly though, so I guess if I were to have imaginary webisodes focused on her, I'd probably go for internet safety or internet wellness as a moral story instead, where the Jiangshi learns to limit her screen time and touch grass. Or maybe learns basic cybersecurity for kids, huh? Okay, I think it's time for us to talk about the elephant in the room, the rigor mortis. Basically, I feel like having really stiff joints and being unable to get around without hopping counts as a disability. Like the Jiangshi can't walk, she can only hop. But it's also something I do not know how to write in a way that would be parallel to the real world, so I do not think it would be very good or respectful representation. Because I feel like the hopping is really getting to me. It's the iconic Jiangshi trait, so I can't delete it, but putting in something as silly as Hoppy Zombie with actual disability stuff sounds risky to me, because it might water down the representation or just make things weird. Pretending that this character was in the show, what if people's disabilities don't relate to the Jiangshi because, you know, alongside actual disability stuff, in between all of that, she would just be hopping around everywhere. And that kind of makes things, what? I don't know. It also might confuse the children. Or maybe I am projecting because I am so confused. I looked at what Monster High did with Frankenstein. In my foggy memory, G1 Frankenstein just had her hands fall off constantly, and it wasn't really a disability, it was more like a quirk. But G3 Frankie is disabled. They have a prosthetic leg. So taking from that, as a hypothetical Monster High writer, I would definitely consider writing the Jiangshi as having a disability, because both her and Frankenstein are monsters who are disabled, but also don't work like real humans, what with Frankenstein's limbs falling off and all that. I just don't really know how to go about this. I think joint problems are an option. Stiff joints from rigor mortis means that she may have problems moving her fingers or something similar. Then maybe she'd use special accessibility tools for all the interneting she does? Or she just takes her time typing? I'm not sure, I tried to do research, but when I googled stiff joints, it really just came up with symptoms and stuff. If I have any viewers with disabilities who would like to comment on this, I would really appreciate you doing that if you want, because I'm always interested in hearing my viewers' opinions. What do you think of Frankenstein as representation for disabilities in G3. Do you think that Jiangshi could be disabled representation, or is it just kind of weird? Off topic, but you know, I'm really enjoying this Monster High series. I feel like it's pretty fun, and some of you have some great ideas for new characters as well. Although I do want to get through my own personal list first. I do think it'd be nice to have a male Monster High character, so let me know if you want one in the comments. In my quest to roleplay as a real Monster High designer, I am, of course, required to fill the quota of male love interests. Just kidding. Or am I? I do actually have a love interest idea for that Jiangshi. You know the trope where dating sim characters gain consciousness? Yes, that's her boyfriend. Literally 2D. Her friends start to get concerned over the amount of time she spends on this new dating sim she's playing. And one day they just ask her, "Dude, stop talking to your imaginary 2D boyfriend for so long." And then the text just changes and the boyfriend is like, "What did you just say to my girlfriend, huh?" And they realize, oh shoot, he's actually real. And then it just turns into a whole, I'm not sure this is a good idea fam situation. You know, they get super concerned about how this relationship is gonna work out. Maybe they learn to accept her arrangements. Maybe they build her boyfriend a body so that she doesn't have to touch screens all the time. Who knows? I think it's a pretty funny idea, honestly. And now we have finally finished with the design. I was actually really excited to go and do this design. I think that after I got my idea and the fashion block dissolved, I was having a lot of fun, and I think that she is actually pretty good. I mean, of course, we can make improvements. I think that the color palette is interesting, but the distribution could have been improved. I think it has just the right amount of complexity, but the spider is just kind of silly looking and the cursors look odd from the way I drew them. But I really like the detachable arm sleeves and the windows, buttons on the belt, on this skirt here. I really like this. I also like this skirt too because it's actually shaped like a file folder. And I also really like these wide black boots because I think they'd help reduce the chances of her falling over. Maybe? I don't know. My understanding of physics is a bit limited. I think she's pretty nice, and although she does stand out a lot, I think that it actually works in her favor a bit. Definitely not something that you would associate with a Jiangshi, more with an alien actually, but I think it's cute and I think it's fun. So like and subscribe if you want to see more videos. You guys have really come up with a lot of fun ideas and name suggestions for me, so thank you for the help. If you want to do name suggestions for her too, sure. The next video is about the possessed doll, and then I'll round it off with the mime golf because I can. And then after that, I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna go wild, maybe. Thank you for being here, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Bye!